for the day, just to kind of keep in mind the lofty ideals of the Metta Sutta. So now let us start by doing some meditation together. This is kind of usually how we begin these little retreats. So it is going to be mostly teaching, but at least we get some meditation in at the beginning. So, there's the bhikkhunis over there. Okay, good. I wonder what happened to her. That's great. So let's just so sit comfortably, find a nice posture for yourself, and we'll get going. Okay, everyone. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of guidance as we go along, just to remind you once again of all the basic and foundational ideas of meditation practice. And first of all, it is important just to enjoy the opportunity to sit down and to let go of all the burdens of life, to leave all of that behind, and just being able just to sit and do absolutely nothing. The idea of enjoying the doing of nothing is a very profound idea. It shows you at the end of the day that being peaceful is far more interesting, far more profound, far more beautiful, far more pregnant with insight than all the activity of the world. Activity at the end of the day is a nuisance. It's a kind of a itch in the mind, which is always there and always problematic. So enjoying the letting go of the burdens is a very important part of the meditation practice. So turn your mind towards that, just the enjoyment of peace, enjoyment of being in good company, the enjoyment of leaving the world behind. And if you can do that much, then guaranteed the meditation is going to be enjoyable. And as you go along, please be careful not to try too hard to watch the breath or whatever, because if you try too hard, the meditation is going to be unpleasant. And I like to give people the idea that the purpose of meditation is to be with rather than to focus on. If you focus on, there's always a degree of willpower and forcing the mind onto the meditation object. But if you are with something, it means that you are relaxing in the company of that thing. And you want to relax in the company of the breath. And I like to give the simile of going for a walk in nature. When you go under the trees and you're enjoying nature around you, you don't focus on the nature. You are with the nature. And being with is a beautiful simile for the idea of meditation. You just be with. You enjoy the trees, you enjoy the sunlight, you enjoy the fresh air, you enjoy the sense of aliveness. In the same way, you enjoy the presence of the breath. You enjoy the soothing, gentle, rhythmic quality of the breath, just enjoying its presence. And as you enjoy the presence of the breath, everything tends to calm down. So be with rather than focus on. And please make sure that you enjoy the meditation object. Don't focus or stay with the breath if you don't enjoy it. It's supposed to be a delightful thing. If you can see the peace, the gentleness, the soothing quality of the breath, then that is a positive thing. You can enjoy its presence. But if the breath becomes tense or uncomfortable, then don't stay with the breath. Do something else instead, like a gentle metta meditation or something like that. May all beings be happy, whatever. And then go on for that way instead until the clarity of mind reaches a level where you can go back to the breath again. It's so important to do things in the right order and the right way. Otherwise, meditation becomes just another burden. And when it becomes a burden, it becomes useless at the end of the day. Okay, so take now just a few moments just to reflect on your meditation. And if you do feel more peaceful, at ease, or whatever, ask yourself why that is the case and how it comes about. Okay, everyone, so let's take a break for about 15 minutes, and we'll carry on afterwards. Eiling, Eiling, are you there? No, gone, disappeared already. Okay. All right, I'll see her when I see her. Great, okay, very efficient. All right, are you ready? Yeah, are you sure? Okay, good. So we just have to see if the if we'll get onto the screen as well. Aha, out. That's a nice sign, isn't it? Fading away, nirodha, cessation. Isn't that kind of beautiful? It's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And there's no rebirth. That's even better. Wow, this is kind of the case, right? This is kind of, it's a nice saying in Thailand. You know that saying, high tech, high tuk? You know that high tech, high tuk? Tuk is Thai for dukkha. Yeah, so high tech, high dukkha. That is the word. It's kind of the way it goes very often. Anyway, I'll just start talking while we get the technology sorted out, because otherwise we may not say anything all day. So we better get, okay, no, yeah, dual screen, right? That's kind of the thing you need. Okay, hold on. This one, this escape first of all. No, that's the. I think there's something wrong with this. Oh, there we are. Yeah, duplicate screen. Yeah, yeah. That should be it. Uh, 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 uh. So the central version? No, not really. Yeah, because this is more like a you know, yeah. See what happens. But the theme for today, in case you're not aware, is the gradual training. And the gradual training is kind of one of the main ways that the Buddha explains the path, all the way from the very beginning all the way to the very end. Yeah, so it starts off with at the very start of the path, and it's kind of interesting to notice what the start of the path actually is all about, then taking it all the way to awakening itself. And it shows this in a kind of gradual way. So you can kind of find out roughly where you are on that path. Yeah, kind of where you kind of fit into this thing. And that's kind of very useful. And it shows the gradual sequence and all of the various elements of the path from the start to the very end. And we did a whole actually workshop on this recently at the BSWA in Perth. And so this is like a contraction of that. So this is forward. Okay. Aha, great. Okay, sadhu. Great, wonderful. Yay, well done. There we are, the gradual training. Yeah, so the Pali word for the gradual training is the Anupubba Sikha. Sikha means like training or practice, and Anupubba is like gradual or step by step or whatever you want to call it. So the step by step training all the way to awakening here. And this way that this is explained in the sutras is usually explained for monastics. And so it often starts off with the idea of going forth, becoming a monk or a nun. However, there is an alternative version, not called the gradual training, but called the gradual instruction, the Anupubba Kata. And this will be the subject for the talk on Friday. So if you want to come on Friday, you can. And that is usually kind of explained to lay people. So you have, on the one hand, you have for lay people, which is the Anupubba Kata, and then you have the Anupubba Sikha, which is usually more related to monastics. And they're basically the same thing. The one for monastics is a bit more detailed. It has more kind of bits and pieces in it, and it's more complete. But the idea is the same, the idea that there is a gradual progression, a gradual movement, and you have to know what the various steps are, you have to know how to move from one to the other one. And if you go too fast, if you try to kind of go to step 3 while you're still on step 2, what's going to happen? You're going to fail, it's not going to work, right? You have to know where you are at. And if you try to go ahead of yourself, if you try to get to jhana when you still should practice the 5 precepts, yeah, you have a problem. So you have to kind of know the sequence, otherwise it's going to be very, very hard. So the gradual training, therefore, is very useful. But one of the reasons also why it is so important is because it is found very often in the suttas. And to give an idea of how often it is found, this gives you the idea right here, I think. Let's see. There we are. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Yeah, it's just I'm watching here and doing it over there. Okay, so the significance of the gradual training here. Yeah, so we have that it is found in the long discourses, the Digha Nikaya, you have it 12 times, I think it says. And then you have 11 times in the middle length discourses, and then you have once each in the Samyutta Nikaya and the Anguttara Nikaya, the connected discourse and then the numerical discourses. Actually twice in the numerical discourses. And so it is a very common teaching framework. And one of the reasons why it is so common, as we shall see very shortly, is that it is basically just an elaboration of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the Noble Eightfold Path laid out in much greater detail so you can understand how it all functions together. And so it's a sequence of things. And these altogether here, 26 occurrences of the gradual training, they also come in a variety of variations, not all the same. They vary quite a bit. And so, for example, the ones in the long discourses are longer than the other ones. That's why it's in the long discourses. And the ones in the middle discourses, sometimes they have a few additional bits and pieces. Like, for example, sometimes you have a bit on moderation in eating, you have a bit on wakefulness, and so you have kind of additional topics added as well. But the one we're going to have a look at is the one which is the most common one, the kind of standard version of the gradual training, which is found usually in the Majjhima Nikaya. And we're going to have a look at the version called the Kandaraka Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 51, and because it kind of gives a nice standardized idea of what the gradual training is. So this is what we shall look at today. And so let me just start off by giving you a quick summary or what this path is about. So this is the outline. So these are like, if you want, all the various elements of the gradual training. And I will just give you a long list straight away. Bang, there you are, long list. And I will go through them one by one in a second. And so there you are. This is how the gradual training is expressed in the suttas. And it almost, in all occasions, it starts with the arising of a Buddha. Yeah, which is kind of in itself a very interesting point. And I want to dwell on that point later on to talk about that, because the arising of the Buddha is a bit strange when you think about it, because we talk about the gradual training, and we think of it as what I should be doing to train. But of course, the arising of the Buddha has got nothing to do with you, got nothing to do with me, right? It's just one of these things that happens in the world sometimes. And so it's kind of strange that is part of the gradual training here. And so we want to discuss that a little bit, what actually goes on there. So you have the arising of the Buddha, and then you have the teaching of the Dhamma, yeah, gaining of faith, you hear the Dhamma, then you go forth. I said this was the monastic path. And then you have the various aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, starting with virtue, contentment and sense restraint. I'm sure most of you are familiar with most of these ideas. Situational awareness or clear awareness. Seclusion, yeah, an interesting point right there. Abandoning of the 5 hindrances, practicing jhana, and then the 3 𝒕𝒉𝒔, the 3 insights and awakening at the very end there. So that is the thing in outline, starting with the arising of the Buddha all the way to awakening. And then we have to do everything in between. That's kind of what this is about. So let us have a look at these things in detail. So gradual training and outline, starting with the arising of a Buddha. Now, this is, as I just mentioned before, this is quite unusual and quite different from how we normally think about training here. Because when you think about training, we think about what it is that we have to do. Yeah, you have to do this, you have to do that to kind of build up your muscles or to go for a jog or whatever it is. It's what we do is the training. But this is a very kind of peculiar Buddhist approach to the idea of training, the arising of the Buddha in the world. Yeah, because what this means is that it means that your training in many ways has got nothing to do with you. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Your training has got nothing to do with you. And that's kind of what this really tells us. It's a very, very profound idea that the arising of the Buddha in the world is necessary for any training to really start. If there is no arising of the Buddha in the world, then there is no right view, there is no understanding. And because there is no starting point, seeing the world in the right way, there also cannot be any training as a consequence of that. And so this is a very profound thing. Yeah, and so without that Buddha arising in the world, nothing happens. You may think you are training, but actually not really training, because it doesn't lead to the same results as you want to have it on the Buddhist path. And so nothing really starts without that. And once we understand the significance of this very idea, it starts to become clear how the entire Buddhist path works, because it works from the same kind of angle, the same kind of point of view. Yeah, that the sense of self is not what drives the path. What drives the path is the right view that comes from the Buddha. And that right view kind of informs. What does it inform? It informs kind of the mind. It conditions the mind. It brainwashes you, right? And when you are nice and clean, yeah, brainwashed, then kind of the path sort of happens because of that. And so it shows you that for the training to really happen, it's like you want to get the self out of the way. And when the self goes out of the way, then this whole process happens by itself. And this is the deeper significance of this idea of a Buddha arising in the world being being the starting point of the whole path. The self is not important. What is important is to kind of allow the process to happen through you rather than you driving the process. You are not keeping the precepts. Yeah, it's like you are observing the precepts being kept. Yeah, oops, precepts are being kept. Okay, interesting. Yeah, and you kind of see that's happening to you. Yeah, or meditation. Meditation happens to you. You are not doing the meditation. If you try to do it, it ends up being a lot of dukkha, because the sense of self always kind of is capable of one thing, creating dukkha. That's kind of what the sense of self does. Yeah, kind of the number one kind of ability of the sense of self is to create problems for you. And so this is the profound idea here of the arising of the Buddha in the world. It shows you something about non-self. It shows you that it is really out of your control. It's something that happens when we get out of the way. So the arising of the Buddha, because the Buddha arises, then we have the teaching of the Dhamma. Yeah, because what Buddhas do, they teach the Dhamma. They, the step from the arising of the Buddha, you can say that the arising of the Buddha is like the arising of right view. Right view becomes available in the world. Before the Buddha arises, there is no right view available, and so there is no practice because of that. And so the Buddha is like this right view being. This is one of the kind of nice ways of thinking about the Buddha. Right view being Buddha, the awakened one, right? To be awake means to have right view. You are awake to the reality of the world, how the world actually works. And so because of that, because you are this reality being, the right view, then you present that view to the world. Why? Because you have compassion for people. Yeah, without right view, as I said, there is no starting point of the practice leading to awakening. And so the only way that people can actually do that is by being given the Dhamma by the Buddha. So the Buddha has compassion for everyone in the world, and because he has compassion for everyone, including us, yeah, that's why we are here, then he teaches the Dhamma as a consequence of that. So two things are required from the Buddha for the teaching. First of all, the right view, having an understanding of the human predicament, and secondly, the looking upon the world and seeing the suffering of beings, which gives rise to compassion. Yeah, knowing that you have the solution to the problem, and knowing that you can then give that solution to others. That's why the Dhamma is taught. So you notice even the teaching of the Dhamma has got nothing really to do with you. Yeah, still got nothing to do with you. If the Buddha teaches the Dhamma, you may be there, you may not be there. I don't know, were you there when the Buddha taught the Dhamma? Maybe you were, yeah. Maybe that's why you're here now, but you didn't listen properly, yeah. You need to maybe that's why I'm still here as well. We didn't listen properly enough in the first place. That's often what happens. It was a nice story. There was a famous Thai monk who came to Bodhinyana Monastery, and he told us that the reason why he was still here was because at the time of the Buddha, I said, oh, all of us were there at the time of the Buddha, and he's probably right. But I was running around telling everyone, go and listen to the Buddha, go and listen to the Buddha. But he didn't listen to it. That's why there was no, he never actually made an end of things. So this is a kind of problematic, right? So the Buddha teaches the Dhamma, but we are not necessarily there. Yeah, but if we are there, if we happen to be there, then something happens. It's again a kind of a non-self idea. The teaching of the Dhamma is available, but whether we're here or not is depending on so many different causes and conditions, whether you'll be able to hear it or not. Once you understand that, the kind of number of causes and conditions are required for you to be able to hear the Dhamma, it gets a bit concerning. Yeah, because you understand that, okay, now you are here, now you have a chance to hear the Dhamma. The word of the Buddha is still available in the world. It is still available now, but what are the chances it will be available in the future? Will you be ready to hear it? Will the word of the Buddha be there? Yeah, now you are obviously ready, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But what about your next life? Are you going to be ready? Where is your mind going to be in your next time around? Or was it in the past? And so you understand that all of these factors kind of have to come together for the teaching of the Dhamma to actually work. You have to be ready, and the Buddha has to arise in the world. And then you also have to meet the Buddha, right? I mean, what are the chances of all of these things happening at the same time? The Buddha arises very, very rarely in the world. The chances of being born in the same place at the same time as the Buddha is tiny, tiny, miny. Yeah, the chances of you having the qualities necessary to understand the word of the Buddha, again, very small. And so you multiply all of those probabilities with each other, and you get up with a number that is going to be extremely small, yeah? And so you see, wow, this is scary. I better, now is the opportunity, now is the chance to listen to the Dhamma. If I don't take the opportunity now, I just have no idea when it's going to be the next time around. Maybe another eon before you have another chance. And where are you going to be in that eon? You're going to be in some places where you may not like to be. Yeah, that's kind of the problem in that eon, because life is so uncertain. And so you start to understand the sense of urgency that is required. So the Dhamma gets taught, the Buddha is present. Now, if you happen to be there at the right time, then what happens is the following. You gain faith in the Dhamma, yeah, hopefully. Or you just reject and say, oh, Buddha doesn't know anything, and you just walk off in the wrong direction. That also happens sometimes. So you gain faith in the Dhamma. Yeah, you hear the teaching of the Buddha, and you think, wow, that is kind of really impressive. Why is it that we feel like that when we hear the teaching of the Buddha? Why is that we feel that this is somehow real? What are the qualities of the Dhamma? And one of the qualities of the Dhamma, one of the most important things the Buddha talks about, are the ideas of happiness and suffering. Yeah, the very first noble truth is the noble truth of dukkha. And the noble truth of dukkha, when the Buddha relates that to you, the content of that noble truth, straight away you recognize your own predicament. You understand that this must be true. Old age is suffering, sickness is suffering. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Death is suffering. We can kind of relate to that. Being separated from what you like is suffering. All of these things are very obvious things. And these are the things that led the Buddha to his own awakening. And when you hear that, you recognize the human condition. And because you recognize the human condition, you start to listen to what this person, the Buddha, has to say about this. And of course, what is so remarkable about the Buddha, not only has he understood that human condition, but he has understood the solution to that human condition. And that is what is so special, because the majority of people in the world, they may understand the predicament, they may understand that there is a real issue and a real problem with our lives, but because there is no apparent solution, because the solution seems so impossible. How can you find a solution to death, right? It seems kind of impossible. And because it is impossible, we kind of just forget about it. We don't even think about it properly. Because if we think too much about it, it just drives us crazy. Because there is no solution to death. That's kind of obvious. But then comes a person and he says, actually, there is a solution to this thing. And not only does he say that there is a solution, but he says that there is a path. There's a way of practice that takes you to that solution. All the most fundamental problems that a human being has to deal with, all of those things are soluble. They are solvable. What is the right word? Solvable means you solve it dissolve it in water, doesn't it? Yeah, it's solvable. All of those are solvable. And and that's kind of extraordinary here. And that's why the kind of the teaching of the Buddha, when you hear that, it kind of rings true, and you start to realize there's something here that is extraordinary, exciting, and interesting. Yeah. Why? Where does that gaining of faith come from? The gaining of faith is not something that you do again. It is something that arises within you. Yeah, it arises. Faith just happens. It's not something that you decide. If you start deciding it again, then the sense of I gets in the way. But actually something that arises. And afterwards you go say, yeah, I'm a Buddhist. Yeah, I'm a Buddhist. What are you, a Christian? Well, I'm a Buddhist. That's much better than being a Christian. Or I don't know what you say, but I'm just saying, then we gain the sense of self. And then we compare ourselves to others. And then this whole thing of discrimination and judgment and all of these things happen as a consequence. But actually the arising of faith is something that just happens inside of you, however you regard yourself, or whether the I takes possession of that or not, that's kind of irrelevant. But you see what is going on. So that is the gaining of faith. Yeah? Then once you gain faith, what happens next? You go forth. So what does that mean? Does that mean that if you haven't gone forth, you haven't got real faith. Is that what it means? Not necessarily, yeah. So I'm not. So what it means is that the ideal kind of the ideal way that the path unfolds is that when you gain faith, that faith is so profound and so deep that you're willing to kind of put your life on the line, so to speak. Kind of that's almost what going forth means. Put your life on the line because you think it is so important to practice this path. And so you give it everything that you've got. That is the idea here with going forth, coming from faith. Yeah, so it is not always the case as sometimes you just can't go forward. It's not really possible. Your family situation or work situation or whatever it might be, there's too many obligations and responsibilities and you can't do it. And so then you don't go forth. Or maybe you haven't got quite the right kind of qualities, yeah, or something is hindering you in one way or another. You feel that, okay, you try to live monastic life, but then when you go to the monastery, you just feel miserable, or you don't find a teacher who inspires you, or whatever it is, yeah, and so you decide not to go for it. There can be many reasons that stop this. But ideally, the highest kind of expression of this is the going forth. And it is the going forth that usually leads all the way to awakening. Yeah, if you want to become an arahant in this life, a perfected one, then ideally you have to go forth, because part of the process is to give up that kind of existence that we have in lay life. And so going forth then happens as a consequence. So you gain profound faith. And from that profound faith, you are willing to give things up, and then you go forth. And then once you go forth, you start practicing the path. So you take up the usual livelihood of a monastic, and here this is said to be virtuous conduct. And the virtuous conduct, as we shall see later on, it comes in a variety of ways. And of course, the primary ones are the speech and the actions that we cannot get sorted out. And so you become virtuous, because that is a very important part of going forth. Yeah, going forth here is like a right intention. And if you have the right intention, the right purpose, then the idea of virtue is obviously a very important part of that. So you practice virtue, and then once you practice virtue, then the next step is to practice contentment. Yeah, these things are, remember that these sequences you see here are not absolute. It's not like one thing has to happen before the other one. It's not like one thing has to be completed and the next one starts. Yeah, they overlap to a very large extent. So the sequence here is more like a kind of general outline of how things work. And the reason why contentment comes after virtuous conduct is because contentment, you are moving towards the morality of the mind when we talk about contentment. Contentment means you don't have excessive desires, you don't have too much ill will or negativity anymore, because you're happy with the way things are. So we're here showing the virtue of body and speech, moving on to the virtue of the mind. Yeah, so contentment usually comes at this point. So in this way it is stage-wise, step-by-step training. Then when you feel content, you have reasonable contentment, then the next step is the sense restraint. Yeah, without contentment it is impossible to restrain your senses. The idea of sense restraint is to purify the mind even more. Yeah, because when you, if you allow your senses just to run around and to do whatever they want and to kind of enjoy here, enjoy there, then the desires and the aversion and the ill will in the world is always going to be, there, very, very, very close to you. And so sense restraint means that you see the danger in those things. Sense restraint is about wisdom. It's about understanding the danger and using that wisdom of the path to turn your mind in a different direction. Yeah, it's mostly about wisdom, not so much about actually using force in the mind. So that's the idea of sense restraint. Purification of the mind is essentially what it comes down to. A lot of this is about things like practicing metta and karuna, because when you practice metta and karuna, basically you're overcoming a lot of the mental defilements. So one way of thinking about sense restraint is the metta practice. Yeah, you can think of it in a negative way as to what you have to stop the bad qualities, but you can also think of it in the positive way. What are the positive qualities to develop that counteract the negative ones? And metta and karuna are two of these qualities that oppose the negative qualities. So by developing your mind in that way, you're actually already achieving sense restraint. It's one of those things that people often not realize, but by practicing metta, yes, you're overcoming ill will, but in fact you're overcoming all the 5 hindrances. Yeah, because you don't really have so much desires if you have metta, because you have a very satisfying sense of happiness already. And so the general worldly desires also are reduced by practicing metta. Sense restraint is also about nekama, it's about understanding the power of renunciation. Yeah, so this is true in monastic life, but also a little bit true in lay life. Yeah, what are your priorities in life? What are the things that really matter the most to you? And if the spiritual path matters a lot, it means that there is a degree of renunciation already right there in your lay life as well. Yeah, you're renouncing excessive interest in the worldly things. So once you have that sense restraint in place, the next one is the situational awareness. And the situational awareness in the Pali language is the sati sampajanya. And sati sampajanya, sampajanya is something like wisdom. Mindfulness and wisdom is kind of what it means. Situational awareness is a translation that is derived from the way this is explained in the suttas. But essentially, it is about wisdom and mindfulness. And what it refers to is knowing what sort of things, or the purpose of the things that in life. Yeah, what is the purpose of doing this? Why am I doing this? Should I be doing this? Yeah, how am I doing it? And without having that sense of purpose, yeah, that you're doing the right kind of things with the right kind of purpose, then sense restraint is impossible. And so from sense restraint, this next stage is necessary for you to enable you to purify the mind even further. So the sense restraint becomes even more profound. When you have the situational awareness, you can deepen the sense restraint because you do things for the right purpose, with the right aim, with the right goal, instead of just to indulge or just to whatever, which isn't very useful. So I'm just going through it in a brief now, just to give you the sense of connection between all of these factors, so you can see what is going on here. Yeah, then when the mind is purified, and you can see already now we have done quite a lot of purification of the mind. We have done the virtuous behavior at the beginning, then we have the contentment, then we have the sense restraint, then we have the situational awareness, and now comes the seclusion. Yeah, so all of this is required before seclusion really is possible. Prior to this, the mind is still too unstable. There's too many things going on in the mind, too much desire this way, too much ill will and aversion that way. And because of that, it's very hard just to be by yourself. The mind rebels. And if you try to force the mind, you can go a bit crazy. Yeah, that's one of the dangers. And they actually talk about this in the suttas. They talk about if you're not ready and you go into kind of profound seclusion in the forest or whatever, then you end up going a bit funny. Yeah, and then you come back and to BF, and then people say, "Ooh." So the whole point of the meditation is to kind of make you more wise, more clear, more understanding, not for you to kind of for funny things to happen. So for that reason, we had to do things in the right sequence. Do things in the wrong sequence, and unfortunately, this happens sometimes, and the very wrong kind of results happen as a consequence. So seclusion happens at a certain point. There is, of course, what you might call a temporary seclusion or short-term seclusion or partial seclusion, all of these kind of things. And I would recommend all of you to try that out sometimes. Yeah, go on a retreat, do something for a short time. But the full seclusion, which is like long-term staying by yourself, that comes further down the path usually. So then you go into seclusion, and what happens next? What happens next is the following. Are you ready? It's exciting, isn't it? Can you remember what I said before? It was such a long list before. I'd be very impressed if you can remember it. But yes, exactly. Well done. Yeah. So abandoning the five hindrances. Now, you may wonder, yeah, I just said you had to be very pure already before you can go into seclusion. So how come the abandoning the five hindrances come now? It seems to be like reversed. Yeah, and the point is that the five hindrances in the suttas usually mean the very refined kind of defilements of the mind. It doesn't mean any kind of defilements of the mind. So the majority of defilements have already been dealt with by the sense restraint and the situational awareness, but there still remains the finer things. Yeah, the kind of thinking about your family or or whatever. Yeah, thinking about your identity. Thinking about maybe some, the things you own or whatever. There are some refined hindrances left in the mind. Or maybe you are a little bit upset, but not very deeply, and these kind of things. So that comes after seclusion. And it tells us something very interesting about how the five hindrances are abandoned. Because in the gradual training, it just says that you abandon the five hindrances, but it doesn't say how you do it. Yeah, so you have to figure it out yourself. So how do we do it? And the answer is that because we have now gone into seclusion, what happens in seclusion? Meditation, right? That's what happens in seclusion. And so the way to abandon the five hindrances is to do meditation practice. And the meditation practice that you do is anapanasati. Mindfulness of breathing is maybe the number one meditation practice that we do, because that fulfills the four satipatthanas, and it does everything that you have to do. And by watching your breath, by doing it in the right way, by kind of nudging the mind a little bit and kind of guiding it very gently, actually you overcome the five hindrances just by watching the breath. And so there isn't necessarily all that much that you have to do. You don't have to kind of try very hard or think about the hindrances one way or another. Basically, mindfulness of breathing is the pathway to overcoming those hindrances. So that is why this happens after seclusion. Yeah, so a lot of purification of the mind happens beforehand. Then you go into seclusion, and then you have the abandoning of the five hindrances. So now it starts to get very exciting, because what comes after the abandoning of the five hindrances? Yes, wow, this is amazing. I'm very impressed with people who know this already. Yeah. What does it say? Practicing jhana. So once the five hindrances are abandoned, then the obstacles for the four jhanas are out of the way. And so then you practice the four jhanas. These are part of the gradual training. These are not optional things that you can do or you cannot do depending on whether you want to or not. They are part of the gradual training. Very often the question arises, are the jhanas necessary or not? Wrong question. Yeah, don't ask that question because it is missing the point. Yeah, why would anyone ask that question? It's because they want to maybe practice the path without the jhanas, right? But it cannot be done. It is included in the Noble Eightfold Path. And sometimes we get caught up in things like Samma Samadhi. What is the definition of Samma Samadhi? And there's a couple of different definitions in the suttas, but none of them exclude the four jhanas. And so don't be too caught up in little definitions like that, because the definition of Samma Samadhi is just a small little thing that occurs in the suttas every now and again. But the gradual training and the four jhanas are everywhere. Yeah, it is a fundamental aspect of the Buddha's teachings. So absolutely they are included. And regardless of how whatever argument you might make from the definition of Samma Samadhi, and again, none of those definitions exclude the four jhanas. Regardless, the jhanas are so important because they are found everywhere in the suttas. Part of the gradual training, part of any proper description of the path leading to awakening. And that's why they are found right here and why they are so important. So practicing jhana. And then from the practicing of the jhana, we come to the three insights. Yeah, three insights and awakening. This is the 𝒕𝒉𝒓𝒂𝒂𝒔, and this is awakening. And so this is the consequence of practicing the three jhanas. The three insights are recollection of past lives, understanding the laws of karma, basically, and finally the insight into the Four Noble Truths, which is the awakening experience itself. So that comes then as a consequence of that. So this takes you then all the way to that awakening, all the way to arahantship, Sotapatti, and then arahantship at the very end. So this is this practice. This is this path. That's the wrong one. No? What? Let's see. Now it's now. Okay, got it. Let's go back. I like to go backwards. It's more fun. Okay. So there it is. The whole thing set out for you. Now you can see it again. All the various parts coming together. And now hopefully you can have some idea why the sequence is the way it is, what actually is going on there, and how one thing sort of naturally leads on to the next one. So that is what that is about. So that is the outline of the gradual training. So this afternoon we're going to carry on and look at all of these things in quite a bit more detail. That gives you a sense of what is happening there. So I'm going to stop a little bit there, and I want to give you a chance to ask questions and to make comments if you like, so we can have a little bit of dialogue, a little bit of back and forth, because I think it's makes it more interesting for everyone. So please feel free to ask whatever questions or comments you would like to make.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning.
Hello. Yeah, I have a question about anger, because talk about sense restraint. If there's anger arising, and an individual restrain the anger, but in the end felt resentment. So how to resolve that part of it in terms of the resentment?
Okay, so what we have to do is we have to resolve the anger in such a way that there's no resentment lingering afterwards. And sometimes what we do, we end up suppressing the anger. And suppressing means that it's kind of waiting to come back out again at any time later on. And so you have to overcome it in a more profound way than just suppressing it. And so sometimes we use kind of the metta to suppress the anger, say, may they be well, oh, may they be well. We kind of don't really mean it, but we try to kind of make them, to say, may they be well. And so what we have to do is we have to instead change our perception of the people, learn to think about them in a new way. And when you learn to think about them in a new way, then you can overcome that anger in a much more profound sense. And so one of the simple ways of doing that is to remember that whoever makes life difficult for you, whoever you are angry with, the reason why they made life difficult for you, the reason why they upset you, is probably because they are suffering. That's probably the reason. If someone else gets angry with you, if someone else treats you badly, says something bad towards you, you are a member of the BF, right? Why would they become angry with a member of the BF? That doesn't make any sense. Members of the BF are good people. Is that true? It's true, isn't it? Because you wouldn't come to a place like this unless you were a good person. That's the whole point of being here. If you didn't practice anything positive in your life, if you didn't have some aspiration to become a better person, if you had some aspiration to be kind and to have metta and karuna, there's no way you would come to a place like this. You would shun a place like this. What? They are kind. Let me stay away from that place. So you are a good person. If someone treats you badly, it is their problem. They are the one who are doing something bad. It's not your problem. And so you can be pretty sure that they are doing it because they are suffering within. That's why they're treating you badly. They had a bad start to the day. Their spouse, their husband or wife kind of told them off in the morning. or something was wrong with the boss at work, didn't treat them nicely, or I don't know what, whatever happens. Hopefully everyone at the BF treated you really well, but maybe even here's occasionally, once in a eon, someone says something wrong, because this is just human nature. And so you learn to see the other person in this way. And when you see them as a suffering being, rather than someone who is trying to make your life difficult, straight away you can let go of it. You can have compassion for that person rather than getting upset with them. Yeah, this is such a simple thing to do, but it's also very, very, very powerful and very profound. And so this is what I recommend you to do. Just see them. Actually, they are suffering today. They're having this is why. And so that's why you turn your mind around. You see them in an entirely new way. This is one way of doing that. There are other ways. Another way that I always use is just to remind myself that everyone is conditioned. Yeah, and the reason why people do what they do, again, is not because they really want to do it. Probably they want to be kind. I think everyone in the world wants to be kind. I think so, because I think every one of us knows deep down that kindness leads to happiness. Why would anyone want to not be kind? And so if we are not kind, it is not because we don't want to be kind, it's because we cannot be kind. Yeah, we are trapped in unkindness. We are trapped in some kind of terrible state of mind. And that trap is basically the conditioning from the past. Yeah, it is all the way we grew up, the way our parents were, our teachers were. Very often it comes from past lives. It comes from all of this programming that has been programmed into us since we were, since time immemorial really. And so you can see people in those two ways, as suffering on the one hand, and as, on the other hand, as trapped in their conditioning on the other side. And if someone is trapped in their conditioning, wanting to do what is kind, but being unable to do so, again, they're worthy of compassion as a consequence. So something like that is what I recommend. Does that make sense to you? Yeah? Okay, great. If it doesn't make any sense, please say so. It's okay to say so, right? Does the gradual training make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah. Anyone it doesn't make sense to? No one is going to raise their hand. That's too. I don't understand anything. Be funny. Yeah. Where are you on the gradual training? Are you at the very beginning or the very end, or somewhere in between? Where are you roughly? Have you considered that? Are you many places at once or only in one place? Are you waiting for the Buddha to rise in the world? The Buddha is already here. Yeah, the Buddha has already arisen. Some people think the Buddha is dead, is no longer around, but the Buddha is still around. That's why we have the gradual training here. Yeah, it's the Buddha, is the Dhamma. It's not really different, and so it's still there. That's the good news.
Hello, Ajahn. Ajahn, you mentioned about overcoming the 5 hindrances by watching the breath. Can you say something more about this, please?
Yes, I shall be very happy to do so. So overcoming the 5 hindrances by watching the breath. So one of the things about the 5 hindrances, especially the first 2, like the kama chanda, the sensual desire, and vyapada, which is ill will, is that they need to be sustained to exist. Yeah, so kama chanda, sensual desire, is there in the mind because you are thinking about something in the wrong way. You are reflecting on something that you enjoy and you like, and because of that, desire is there in the mind. Yeah, and that can often be a very suppressed kind of desire. It can be very underlying. It can be more like an attachment in the mind, but it is sustained by the way we think about things. If you stop thinking about those things, then that kama chanda will gradually fade away, because it can only exist when it is sustained in that sense. And so if you are watching the breath, you're not allowing the thinking mind to sustain those desires. Yeah, you're not thinking about lunch in the meditation? Are you? I don't know. Sorry, I'm being naughty. Of course, sometimes you are thinking about lunch in the meditation, right? That's the reality of things. But usually we try to avoid thinking about lunch in our meditation. Or you're thinking about whatever. You know, there's a classic example in the Sutta that I really is so nice. I think it's such a beautiful example of how what meditation sometimes can be like for people. Yeah, and this is Lady Visakha. She goes to the Buddha and she asks the Buddha, "How should I keep the uposatha?" And the Buddha said, you should keep the 8 precepts, yeah. And then in the afternoon, you should meditate, and you should not. And when you meditate, you should not think about, oh, tomorrow I'm going to have this beautiful meal because today I can't eat. Right? I'm going to have entertainment like this. That's the wrong way to spend the uposatha. And it's quite common for people, especially when they go on a retreat for the first time, keeping the 8 precepts. It's hard to keep the 8 precepts. We're not used to that. I am used to it, but most people are not used to it. And so it's natural to think about, the dinner that you are missing, etc. And so, but this is what we're trying to avoid with the breath meditation. And so when you stay on the breath, you're not allowing the mind to wander into that area. And because it doesn't wander into that area, it means that gradually the desires and attachments calm down. Yeah, this is what I mean by the breath meditation, reducing those 5 hindrances. The same thing with ill will. Ill will is even more obvious. It is only sustained when you're thinking about that person, right? Oh, that person really difficult. And the moment you are watching the breath, the more you watch it, the less ability you have to think about that person. And so gradually, the mind purifies of these hindrances. Yeah, deeper and deeper and deeper. Sometimes it needs a bit of support. Sometimes you need a bit more active contemplation to remember not to think about these things. Sometimes you need to stop, say, okay, this person has been very difficult. Let me do some metta instead. Let me do some karuna. Let me try to think about them like I was just saying to this other lady over here. Yeah, and then overcome it. Then come back to the breath again. So it's not just breath meditation. It is breath meditation in conjunction with various perceptions and various ways of thinking about things. This is what I mean, yeah? And then as your breath becomes deeper and deeper, you start to experience joy, hopefully, yeah, at some point in the breath meditation. When you start to experience joy, then the idea of ill will and desire is even less likely because, you have something much better. And so these things become kind of irrelevant, yeah? And so gradually, all of these things fade away. Your attachments to the sensual world also start to fade away as you do this as well, because you're finding something higher. And as you find something higher, your entire interest in that realm starts to disappear. Yes, attachments are going down. You're not so important to you anymore, whether you get a promotion at work or whether whether you have this house or that house and all of these kinds. Gradually moving down. Am I making any sense to you? Yeah? Great. Okay. Good. Yeah. It's one of the dangers of being a speaker. It always makes sense to myself. To me, it makes, but I have no idea about anyone else. So, great. So, anyone else, please? Please feel free. Yeah.
Thank you for your teaching today, Ajahn. With the gradual trainings, even though that you said that it's not an absolute sequence, but it works in a bigger extent, it seems like seclusions take an important role for the practice, for the meditation practice to progress. That's what that's what my understanding is so far. Does it mean that jhana is very difficult to attain for a layperson like us? And I often find it quite challenging at this moment of my practice to balance between my aspirations to progress in my meditation practice and my responsibilities as a layperson in our daily life. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Seclusion is important, but at a fairly high stage of the path, and so you can still do like simple meditations, in daily life. You can do like short meditations, like maybe 20 minutes or something like that every day, or even 15 minutes, but enough to give you a little bit of benefit. Sometimes we just need to de-stress a little bit. Sometimes we just need to relax, and meditation can at least help you with that. Or meditation can be more like a kind of metta meditation or Brahma Vihara meditation where you build up the good qualities inside instead. Yeah, so these are the kind of things I would recommend in daily life. Breath meditation in daily life can do if it works for you. For many people, it's going to be too hard. So instead, do something which actually gives some real benefits. Yeah, either just being aware of whatever is happening, like a general awareness meditation where you just relax, or the metta meditation to kind of bring up some good qualities. That's what I would recommend. Occasionally, however, you may want to go on a retreat. Yeah, you come to Jana Grove, come down to Australia, to Perth or whatever. Yeah, many of you have been down there already, which is great. And just do a proper retreat. That is when you have an opportunity to get into deeper meditation, because that's where you have sufficient seclusion. Jana Grove is one of the few retreat centers in the world where you have your own room and your own bathroom. Yeah, you really can really have a good time. We built it on purpose like that to make it kind of suitable for deep meditation, because Ajahn Brahm, for him, deep meditation is so important. And that's how we built that center. So occasionally you can do that. And if you are able to practice the rest of the path really well in the rest of your life, then you will quite likely get some good results, yeah, when you go to a proper meditation center and try it out. So that's kind of how you can combine the two a little bit and combine the world responsibilities. Would you like to, is that okay, or would you need to ask some more? You okay? Yeah? All right. Good. Excellent. Sadhu.
Hello, Ajahn Brahmali.
Hi.
Welcome back to Singapore. I think we're all very happy to have you always. Okay. Okay. I would like to clarify the meaning of sila, which was written as virtuous conduct on the screen earlier. So beyond the 5 precepts, the other precepts seem to be morally neutral. For example, how much food we eat, where we sleep, etc. And they promote simplicity and contentment. In other words, reducing our craving for sensual pleasures. And given the morally neutral nature of many precepts, sila appears much broader than morality. But it's about living in a way that reduces our reliance on sensual pleasures for our well-being. So the question is it correct to say that sila is fundamentally about not acting out of craving? Or what is sila?
What is sila? Yeah, it's a good question, actually. It's a very good question. So thank you for that. And I would say the way sila is used, as you quite rightly say, is used more like kind of a conduct in general. Yeah, your conduct as a human being. And that conduct is not just related to moral conduct, but also to kind of broader conduct in terms of what is really important in your life. What are you focusing on? Is your conduct geared towards worldly things, or is your conduct geared more towards spiritual things, for example? Yeah, so all of that. So it's actually a very, very broad thing. And you could say that ultimately, I would argue that sila is about what kind of personality you have. Yeah, all the qualities of your person is really included within the idea of sila. And so this is why the English word virtue is actually very suitable to translate sila, because virtue also is a very broad word. Virtue doesn't mean just good conduct or moral conduct or whatever. In English, many things can be virtues, positive virtues. Yeah, like frugality can be a virtue in English, for example. Yeah, so it's a very, very broad term. And so I think actually it is the right way of translating the word sila. So go and look up virtue in the dictionary later on and see what it says, yeah, and it will give you kind of a broad understanding of what is going on here. But it means like general conduct, almost like habit, who you are as a person, yeah, your entire personality is kind of included within the idea of sila. So yes, that's why you have restraint is included there, and the mental conduct is included there, and all of these other things are part of that. So yes, thank you. Good question. There's someone at the back there, just in the corner. You can't see him because hiding in the corner.
Hello, Ajahn. Can you explain a bit more about right view?
Sure. I just came back from Sri Lanka recently. I was in Sri Lanka. I had a really good time in Sri Lanka. I would really, if you have a chance to go to Sri Lanka, I would really recommend it. It's just a beautiful place, beautiful island, very green, very Buddhist. Yeah, then you go around and you travel around. You see all of these ancient monuments everywhere. Yeah, the old monasteries that have been there for over 2,000 years, and it's just a fascinating place. I must admit, I really love going to Sri Lanka. I love coming to Singapore as well, but I also love Sri Lanka. It's different, right? It's different way of liking liking him in different ways. And while I was there, we had a 7-day or 8-day retreat at a place called Nagananda University, which is just on the outskirts of Colombo. And the theme of that retreat was right view. So the entire retreat, I think I spoke for 30 hours just on right view. And very good fun, because right view, in a sense, is what all the Tipitakas is really right view. The entire content is right view. Yeah. So you have right view in terms of just the way you think about things, but your practice also. You have an idea about how you practice. That is also right view. Yeah. The point of the Buddha's discovery is he didn't just discover an insight into the nature of reality, but he also understood how to get to that nature of reality, how to actually achieve it. And that's obviously the Noble Eightfold Path. That is also an insight. That's also an understanding. That's also part of right view. And so that means that everything is really right view. And so the whole 4 Tipitakas, the 10,000 pages, are right view. So if you want to find out right view, just start on page 1 and just read 10,000 pages, and you're going to have right view. But there are certain fundamental things about the Dhamma that are more important than others, more important in terms of right view. And one of those things that are really significant in terms of right view is that if you are a good person, you're going to get a profound degree of happiness and contentment and joy and all the good qualities in your life. That is a kind of right view that is really, really important. Your actions, how we live, has very important consequences. If you live a good life, you're going to have very good consequences. If you live a bad life or a dodgy life or whatever you want to call it, it's going to have bad consequences for you. This is basically the idea of karma, right? And the Buddha, of course, says karma is a very important part of the idea of right view. So understanding it deeply, yeah, this is not a superficial understanding at all. The Buddha goes so far as to say that the noble ones, for them, doing a bad act by body, speech, or mind is like picking up a hot piece of coal. So straight away they reject it. Yeah, straight away they throw it away. In other words, if you make a mistake, straight away you confess it. You try to avoid picking it up in the first place, right? Not doing the bad action. But if you by accident happen to pick it up because you thought it was, because of delusion, thinking it was okay to pick it up, you throw it away and you confess your offense straight away. And so this is kind of the degree to which these things are bad. Yeah, they're fundamentally problematic. They burn you when you pick them up. So that is the karma side of things, the importance of living well, importance of living with kindness. The other aspect of right view that is really fundamental to understand is the idea of rebirth. Yeah, this is really fundamental on the path, and we often underestimate the power of the idea of rebirth, because the way the Buddha talks about the first noble truth, for example, yeah, the first noble truth, he says, jati pi dukkha, jati pi dukkha, vyadi pi dukkha, jara pi dukkha, maranam pi dukkha, apiyehi sampayogo dukkho, piyehi vipayogo dukkho, something like that. Yeah, that's roughly right. If you go, it's easy for me here in Singapore because I know more Pali than everyone. But if I go to Sri Lanka, everyone knows more Pali than me. Yeah, even the lay people. And so it's very embarrassing. I feel really. But but what is interesting about that one? It's kind of on the surface. It's very easy to understand because it says that old age is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. We can agree with all of that, right? But actually, it begins with birth is suffering, jati pi dukkha. Yeah, and so what it really means, because jati here does not mean the birth we have already had, it must mean future birth, because we are to overcome suffering. We cannot overcome the birth we have already had. It must refer to future birth. And so because the birth stands at the beginning, the sequence of old age and death and illness and being separated from what you like and being united with what you don't like, actually all of that refers to the future. It refers to samsaric existence. It refers to the round of rebirth. And it is in that context that the first noble truth of suffering needs to be understood, only in the context of rebirth. And so it is rebirth really that is the ultimate problem that the Buddha is trying to understand. And so if you understand, have these two kinds of right view, the idea of rebirth and the idea of actions have consequences right here and right now, but also for future lives, then you have a very solid foundation of right view right there. That will take you a long way. There are many more things as well, aspects of this that are really important, but those are the two kind of crucial elements. So what do you think about those right views? Do you agree with those right views, or do you think those right views are wrong views? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Sometimes people think right view is wrong view, right? That's a problematic. You can see why that doesn't work very well.
We'll take one last question.
Henry wants to ask a question at the back there.
I see going forth quite high up in the list. And going forth, does it only mean putting on the robes?
Does it only mean putting on the robes? In this case, it does, yes. In this case, it means putting... But, you know, again, these teachings are given in different ways in many different places. And in the gradual instruction, the Anupubba Kata, it actually relates to lay people. Here it relates to monastics, the other one relates to lay people. And the sequence is basically the same. So if you come on Friday, Henry, on Friday I'm going to do the Anupubba Kata. So be there on Friday, and you can see it from the perspective of lay people. Yeah. So, but basically, I think the idea here is that it shows the path from the kind of the ideal way of practicing it, and the highest kind of way is kind of the idea here, because it ends in awakening. An awakening, of course, is usually it's usually only possible if you become a monk at some point or a nun at some point. Yeah.
But there is hope for lay people in retirement, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of hope. Yeah. No, I'm being naughty. I'm being silly. Of course, there's hope. Yeah, you just do the very best you can. You know, you practice the path. You go as far as you can. You can go a long way on the path. And if you become an arahant, we will put you into robe straight away. So you're fine. Yeah. So you just no worries, as they say. So great.